Welcome to Angela Adams Consulting Remote Employees Overview. We're going to discuss the monitoring and managing of your employees and helping to keep your team focused while working with your remote employees. I'm Angela Painter, an advisor with Angela Adams Consulting. I'm really happy to be sharing this information with you. I think it's going to be important as we discuss what issues your team is currently having and what you need to do as a manager and a management role, as well as the tools that you can use to help you through this time period. Let's start with managing a remote team effectively. Really, trust is the foundation. Communication is key. You need to have goals and control and reporting that can help make it happen. I also want to talk a little bit about feedback, which is really the guarantee of perfection. The more that you hear from the team, you get more out of that in the long run. And remember, reality still matters. What's going on is still matters. You've hired some really trustworthy staff. We know that they want to cooperate and make the most of the situation. You need to take care of having sufficient communication. Use those modern tools that are out there to help facilitate the work and the communication. With those goals, set reachable and clear goals. Let people know that their work really matters. And remember, give and collect feedback. Keep in mind the challenges the team is really under, the lack of face-to-face supervision. Both managers and employees often have concerns in this area. They really miss that face-to-face interactions. With management, you're worried your employees aren't going to work as hard and as efficiently. And with the employees, they struggle with reduced access to your managerial support and communication. There's research that says basically that really employees work harder. They don't even know what to do with themselves in some cases. And sometimes those employees are also feeling that their remote managers are out of touch with their needs. So they have to be supportive in both areas. Lack of access to information, that's really the key, is making sure that you have the tools in place for them to do their job. Social isolation is something over a period of time really becomes one of the most biggest complaints, loneliness. It's really thought that extroverts may suffer from isolation more than the short run, but they will if they don't have opportunities to connect with others in their remote work environment. But over a longer period of time, it can cause that feeling of you feel less belong to the organization. We know there's distractions at homes. Many employees are having to become teachers. They have their parental job while they're there, and then they're trying to work. So we understand that. The managers need to understand how they can support those remote employees. So while we might be keying into ways for you to effectively manage your team and what tools to make sure they're doing the work, if you will, remember the other side of that, with the distractions at home, understand that having an established structure of maybe daily check-ins. So we'll talk a little bit about some tools you can use with that. It's really maybe a form of a series of one-to-one calls if your employees are a little more independent, or maybe it's just a team call, which their work is highly collaborative. You probably have both cases with our insurance teams. It's really important to keep those up to date, those check-ins. Many times we have the communication technology that can support us, so we want to use that interaction. Really offering that encouragement and emotional support is going to be key. You're going to have some that are going to just flourish with this work ethic and this change for them, and then others are going to struggle. They are used to getting more guidance. So knowing as a manager, that is probably one of your biggest challenges, is knowing how much is too much or how much is not enough. Now, let's talk about tools that can help you monitor and make sure that the work is getting done. Really, today's session, I want to key in that area. Some tools that you have right in AMS 360 is the Renewal Management, Doc 360, Activity and Suspense, the Out of Office tool, an Audit Trail, and Reporting. Let's look at how AMS 360 and these tools can help you. Renewal Management. It manages your renewals electronically. So what we're really talking about is using an existing tool you already have, but making sure that you're checking the status of your renewals. Make sure your team is working on schedule, and also maybe identifying who needs help. So the renewal management tool itself, remember, mirrors the expiration report. You can run this report in however manner you want. But what you can do is assign it to a responsible party. That's someone that's going to see the whole list. So I typically like to run it for commercial lines, have my commercial lines manager be the responsible party. When the list runs, it will, based on your criteria, it will fill in who the default account manager is assigned. You're going to have a chance with that tool to reassign if you need someone else to help with the work. But it can do that all in one fell swoop. Keep in mind, you can also CC someone else. Maybe it's the manager and another lead. And that way you have the overall list. Sometimes there's an option there if you also want to include the producer. But once sent, the manager view will display on my renewal list tool. So then you're really talking about, as a manager, seeing all the renewals across employee assignments. You can see the completed, that's usually the way I want to, the incomplete, what I want to look at. I can also see anything that maybe I'm a backup for another manager. So you have that option of that CC where they always see it, or the out of office tool, which we'll talk about in a bit, to use that as a backup. Remember, the buddy system is always great. Have someone else available to look at the list in case you are also out. There's links in there that you can also do work yourself. But what's most important is that assigned to column and knowing who's doing the work, reassigning the work as needed, and then checking the stage that this tool is in. That's really a key item. Stage is what tells you whether it's been renewed or it's going to be marketed, or if it's been renewed, quite frankly, though, it would not be marked as incomplete. So keep that in mind. But it will also tell us if it's in progress. Those smart buttons help us set the status or stage. So just keep that in mind, because this tool is powerful, but you can key into it during this period to even see what work is getting handled for your renewals. Now let's move into the Doc 360. This is always something that the teams that I talk to say, oh, we don't use Doc 360 because you're thinking only in scanning modes. Well, anytime you've attached a document to an activity, you use Doc 360. Now, while I'm concentrating really with the teams and utilizing probably customer policy documents more, remember your accounting team can also be doing this. This is what keeps you centralized. It helps with the retrievability of your documents, also sharing and rerouting work, and then, of course, indexing, documenting, and making sure the right actions and document types are all assigned. This is really key. So just as a further define of that, if you have a central repository, you know where your documents are. So the sooner you get it in, the better. It's safe, it's backed up, it's encrypted, all of that. You don't have documents sometimes out on people's desktops or maybe in a shared folder sometimes. You have a consistency that it's always in 360. And don't forget, employee folders, your company contracts, you can put in the bank area. And of course, if people have access to those, they can see those documents to do their job. This is all about everyone doing their work remotely. You need to think a little more about that retrievability. If users are indexing the documents, they'll be able to find and search and reuse documents because it's all in your management system. The agency management team can have more visibility as well into unprocessed emails and documents. Talk about more of that in a moment. Sharing and routing, as I said earlier, forwarding documents, sending a second request. If you're utilizing the system will track the history even of a document. So it's really great to use the 360 to manage it and not have documents all over the place. And lastly, but not leastly, you can also then act upon these documents, viewing and editing if it's not attached yet to an activity, deleting, copying, reassigning. I love the copy feature. When you're on a document, you can copy it and then paste it right into another email that's already started as another thread. So lots of great stuff in the Doc 360 tool set. So my documents, I mentioned, that's your incoming documents. Now, that would be our incoming mail, and these are the unprocessed documents. You can find those unprocessed documents as a manager through a couple of ways. So off of your toolbox, your document management option, you have a Find Documents that brings up the document search. Also, this is available at the very top of 360 in your quick access. They call it Doc 360 Search. Same screen's going to pop up for us where we can find all of our documents. Now, in this example, I know that Angela has not been able to get to some work. I can search for the user center, Angela Painter, and then I can see what documents she has not processed. The cool thing is I can get in there and then I can reassign them. So finding them this way, you have a whole set of criteria in the unprocessed documents area to filter your search. In fact, if you need to look more, I was just purely wanting to see that this user had. Now, as a manager, you would have rights to be able to view that. User to user, I only have rights for myself and the person that I've been assigned to that in my setup that's been assigned together. So don't forget about that global search of documents. You can also set up your Doc 360 hotspot. Now that's that fancy Doc 360 term again. You have it already. Most of the time we set it up, and quite frankly, down below you'll see per employee. So we're going to pick on me again, Angela Painter. And you'll see that typically it's the middle one, enable the Doc 360 hotspot for on-demand scanning, which means that the activity screen would pop up if we dragged and dropped. I'll show it to you in a moment. Well, instead, you can use a distribution aspect to this so that when we want to quickly get documents in the system and then assign it to people and have, say, like a receptionist helping us with this, and it would be great, or having assistants. And that way you have some teammates that it's harder for us to scan while we're remotely. So if we're scanning and maybe someone is going to the office because we only have so many people going in there, that might be the one job. Things get scanned, they get distributed. And again, having the hotspot, which is down here below, on your very bottom of 360, right where the same toolbox menu is, you'll see contacts. I happen to have alerts, but what I'm talking about is the Doc 360 hotspot. And again, most of the time for most users, they're dragging and dropping there and it brings up the activity screen. But instead, when you change this to the distribution mode, you're going to get the distribution screen. Really cool about it is I can assign who this is going to. So Angela Painter, I already know it's for Parlo Construction, so I can do some pre-indexing. That's what that's called. If I even knew the policy number, I could select that. It should look familiar. It's not that far being different from activity, but what we're doing is sending this to Angela so she would have it in her inbox while she's sitting at home. So distribution, scanning in, sending documents to people. I could put 2 or 3 in here actually and keep adding, right? Because you could drag and drop right onto this form too once I have it open. So I took this Excel spreadsheet, brought it in, I named it. I even put a document type, or could. Again, pre-indexing helps our people at home. I say okay, and at okay, Angela sees it in her documents, and there it is. So we don't think about that when you've got all this mail and things are coming into the office. So maybe so-and-so's picking it up. Well, we should have so-and-so scan it in, distribute it accordingly. And again, that distribution hotspot is a really easy way for them to do that. So they can also many times bring it into your documents. Maybe they all get put in here. And then we use, if you can see slightly shaded here, the reassign and send it to individuals and do distribution here too. So not a big deal. And in fact, if this wouldn't have come to Angela, maybe it shouldn't have, I could also reassign it. But look, you can change indexing. You can do a lot. Really need to explore my documents. I could probably go on for days. Let's talk about documenting in general. Right now is the time when you need your team, if anything, to over document. Document everything. You need it real time. Using your activity and suspense is a must. Real time documentation. Get those emails in 360 real time. We cannot afford by the end of the day people scooting in everything after the fact. They need to be doing it as they work. If they're working from that My Documents, which we saw before, that even can log an activity from there and have that file moved into the activity for the appropriate customer policy. Or again, if you're accounting, your accounting team can put it into the right file accordingly. Now, don't forget to use a couple of other features with activity. Activity grouping helps you tell the story. If you haven't used that yet, you need to find out more about it. It's a way to group your activities for an event. And then utilizing the append activity, that's not what I mean by tying things together. That I want you to be able to add things later. So, your team might be saying, well, I'm so used to doing everything at the end of the day. I just pull everything in that I did related to that change request. No, you create the activity as you're going. Real time, doing the endorsement. I'm creating it in 360. I created my policy change. Okay, now you might have already gotten the email back from the carrier binding it. You can add that to that activity. You can append the activity with both the description, the date, time stamps, whatever you change, and you can add more documents. So it's really a must that we really enforce this with the teams. Another tool is the out of office tool. Now, I love to see this as, yes, it's a backup. It's when I'm out of the office, someone's going to follow up for me. But I also like to think of it as a buddy system and keep it on all the time. So users or management can do this. You have backups and buddies system for suspense, documents, and renewals. So when you're out of the office, the employee can do it themselves. So I would probably ask everybody to do theirs right now through that toolbox, user settings and tools, out of office assistant. Then they would select that they're out of the office. Of course, that's important when they really are, but I keep it turned on and then it becomes a buddy system. Then I can give backups for those incoming documents. Margaret's mine. She's going to see mine and hers. Guess what? There's filters on that screen. If we were to go look at my document, you can filter out the ones you're the backup and work on yours, and then see your backups and work on those. You'll see my suspense. I've chosen to have a different employee help me with my suspense. Joan's going to do that. And last but not least is renewal management. Now there's two in there. That's because there really is two aspects to the renewal management tool. Earlier, I talked about it for you as a manager, but I also want you to think of that my expiring policies is the part that is for the account managers that are working or who we've assigned those to. They have their own view. So because I do both, I've asked Angela Adams to be my backup for my manager renewal list and Renee Marshall to actually help me with my policies because I'm one of those wonderful working managers. I think you all are. Now, the other thing is maybe you want to go ahead and do that for the employees. You can do that through the employee setup. Under the name and address section, you'll see that out of office assistant, and then you can check that the employee's out of the office. So when we know that they're not available, then these active assignments, you just keep them on. If you don't want to show them to these other people, you would uncheck the box. If you want to have the buddy system, which means it's turned on all the time, great. We know who's backing people up all the time. And we don't have to worry about turning it on or off. Something that's really, really helpful, and I highly recommend you creating that. Now, what I wanted to talk about next is the audit trail. Now, this is a utility that you can find in your administration center. This looks at where your employees have been. You can utilize this tool to review how many customer policies that have been touched, as well as really monitor where your employees are stepping. I call it stepping because it really is a footprint of where they've been. So the audit trail, again, allows us from the administration center utilities, you'll select audit trail. If you're not seeing this, you need to go set up a security group for the managers that you want to have access to it. So if they're not seeing it, there is some security involved in getting it to show up under the utilities for them. Maybe you don't want people in other aspects and all they get is this. So create a security group that's just for Audit Trail. Turn it on, give it to those 3 or 4 managers, and now they have them. Once you select the Audit Trail, you're going to get the display right in the admin center. It's a little different. It doesn't pop up like all the other windows. Now, you'll want to look at the entities. The ones that you want to look at is what customers people have been in. I really like Policy Best. So I was searching for where have people been from April 1st to April 7th. And you can see it will show who accessed. I can actually look this up for a specific employee. This is all. So I could kind of look through, and for us, we've only had 51 touches, if you will. You're going to see a lot more than that. Now, when I do the employee, I can select the employee. So I would pick Angela Painter, and for that time period, it would filter this list to only show me where Angela's been. Now, why I do that is I do compare who's working on what. In a certain given of time, I would expect my account managers to really kind of have a similar touch points. Now, I get it. There's some that have large accounts and maybe they're in there more. Now, when I say touch points, this is when I'm opening and I'm saving. So you're going to see Elizabeth in the Uphill Homes, and there were multiple touches and multiple saves, kind of right after each other. But all in all, what I'm really liking is this number down below. And I've seen it where I've had people that say they're so busy, and then others that, trug along. And that person that's trugging along has gotten 400. And the one that says they're so busy, it's 200. So it's just another way to monitor where the employees have been. Now, keep in mind, when people are working remotely, I also don't want them in accounts that they shouldn't be in. This would show me that. Like, it's really curious. Why is Joan in Joan's Java house? It's not an account she normally works on. So I can be alerted to that as well. Now, remember, I ran this for all customers. Once you have the customer number, that's your account number, 1376 here for Parlo, I could look that up, and then I could see anybody that's been in Parlo. Maybe I'd look already back to the beginning of the year, or maybe when this whole, where we've had more remote working, where it started. So a really great underutilized tool. Lastly is the 360 reports. You really need to think about some of these standard reports because they do a great job of tracking where our employees are. So some to consider is the 360 login, activity suspense, transaction, and document type reports. So the login report, use this to see who hasn't logged in. Unfortunately, it doesn't give us all the times when people have logged in and out, but the Audit Trail can help you with that. Like if there's certain days and you're not sure what they've done during that day, then you can look that up in that Audit Trail we just saw. The login, you'll find it under Classic Reports. It's called the user login information. When you select it, you can say your time period. So you'll see mine here. It was since who hasn't logged in since, March 8th. And I checked it. I've checked it fairly regularly to see. It does show I've sorted it by the date they last logged in. There's some other sorts you might find more interesting. So my suspects have been my admin. That kind of maybe makes sense. I'm really sorry to call out my 3 coworkers, but there hasn't been any reason for them to be in ours. But Debbie, Elizabeth, and Lavinia. So I need to have a conversation. I may have already known that Debbie was going to be out this week or whatever the case is, but they really haven't logged in since February 7th, right? 60 days. You'll set what those dates are. Very interesting information. I use this a lot. So if someone's really not using the system, if I really need to shore up a license, I might do this as my proof. The proof is in the pudding. I might say, hey, Lavinia, I understand, you're retired and that occasionally you have bad access, but you haven't logged in 60 days. Can I give your license to someone else? That's just a great conversation to have. Activities, we all know and love our activities, but this is a great time to be really using it to see who's logging activities and actually what actions, what are they doing? What kind of work? They're busy, busy, busy. Well, they're busy at what? So can activity list from the reports. You're going to look, I like to run it for all when I'm in a management mode. You might be looking again, making sure for you want to make sure that you're in a specific group, or perhaps you're looking at, specific actions. But when you run the all, then you can look at it by date. Was sorted by date, but it could certainly be by employee. The one I really like to actually kick this out, we really highly recommend into Excel and do pivot tables. I just did a simple one here where it shows each employee. So Renee, and what was the number of action count? She did 2 activities that had policy deleted and submission deleted. So whoops, I apologize for that. I got ahead of myself. So pivot tables are easy peasy. We can always show you how. But using the export feature out of reports for any of these I'm showing you, you can get really fast counts by using pivot. So love that. Suspense, use this report to see and review your past due suspenses. This is really going to be what helps you as a manager who's not closing out of work. We have to do this. This is a perfect time to get some really bad habits cleaned up. The team knowing that we're going to be running this, because that's something I see all the time. Folks aren't closing their suspense. They're not doing their follow-ups. You can also see how many times a suspense had been rescheduled. So, the call out there is, are you just rescheduling and not really completing the work? You need to think about that when you actually then get the report. You'll see rescheduled over at the end. So these are some old suspenses, and I haven't been good at cleaning them out. I'm going to have my team, this has got to be a homework assignment for them, as they need to be cleaning these old suspenses. So it's really lets you know we have some old things that need cleaned up. There's lots of ways that others can access the suspenses as well. So don't think that it has to be just, that employee. If that employee is no longer there, or some things like that might come out through. Something to keep in mind. Transaction report. This report is used to see who and what transactions are being processed. This allows us to make sure that we are looking at the transactions themselves. So this is your transaction report. I usually, run in something like for the current month or the dates that you're looking at. But what you're going to see here are the transactions that were processed. So Nancy Erickson employee, or if I had gone to Angela Painter, we would see what kind of transactions I'm doing. Activity is really powered by the user. Transactions mean I click the transaction in 360. New business, renewal, endorsement, cancellations. Love to put this one out in a CSV as well. I use this for auditing to find what work we're doing. So this is more of like a numbers kind of count of work that's being done in 360, and we know these buttons have been pushed. And so whether there was an activity that related to it, kind of a separate thing. And we know that has to be in the trust factor with activity. This is a footprint that somebody actually processed the transaction, and it defaults to the logged in user. It'll show the processor as well as the account manager. Processor, I mean, is the person that was logged in and actually clicked. I have found that if someone's gone into that transaction and made a change, it will show them as the last processor within that transaction. Now, I'm bringing up that and talking about audits. I want to quickly just remind you how important it is to audit your team. So even through these items that we just talked about, you might be doing weekly. Make sure that you are auditing. Make sure that your team is being effective in their operation and your organization. Make sure they're in compliance with all of the administrative regulations, your processes and procedures. You've got to get a sense of confidence in management. That's what will do it as well. Is our business functioning well? And can we meet challenges like we're having right now with the remote? So maintaining this also with consistency helped you with your community, and this due diligence for your shareholders and investors and anybody else that is important. But most important, protect that E&O. Do you know your E&O deductible? This is key. So even while we're talking about that, really conducting an audit is the one way to ensure things run smoothly. Even in this today's climate, you have to have that. So making sure other things to make sure that the work is getting done, we really suggest your phone system. You'll have login reports there. Using Skype, this is a great check-in. Remember I said check-in daily? You'll know that they're doing work in the specific hours. They're really quite helpful. But it's a great communication. I don't feel so lonely. Using Teams is another. I gave an example here of like a employee remote monitoring. This is more of an IT type tool. Casilla is really one of many that help us with remote monitoring from an IT. I can see what's going on your desktop, not just in 360. You need to consider some tools like that the more and more that we look at the remote world. And then remote meetings, you should have some mandatory meetings that people come in. You need these check-ins. You need the team building. We need to hear who's having issues. We need to be able to help each other. Those video conferencing type programs really help. I hear lots of you using them, and I give you kudos for that. I really want to make sure you know what else is out there. But lastly, I leave you with, we're here to help. We're really thinking through all of this for you. I know I gave you a lot of information. It was a jam-packed session. But what I really want you to understand is if there any piece of today's presentation for you that you would like to know more, please contact us. We really are here to help. We've got some great team members. We even are helping many agencies with servicing their clients. And so we're remote workers as well. And we want to help you understand how to work even in that world going forward or as you need to today. Thanks so much for your time. I really wish you the best. All of us at Angela Adams Consulting appreciate you taking the time to sit through today, but also your partnership moving forward. Thanks again.